where the line comes from, but in my head, this guy was just saying, Steph, I have great problems with this idea of being on the web because I'm just silly. But in any case, there's a line, I can't remember where it comes from, welcome my friends to the show that never ends. Is it? Okay. Thank goodness someone is as old as me. Yeah, it's like if somebody says the words get out, and immediately it triggers in the back of my head, get out of Denver, baby, go. Just straight away, get out of Denver, that's it. Okay, so we're in the third chapter. We've rejoiced. Been there, done that, got the T-shirt. And then we started moving into the rest of the dedication, which is actually quite long. So we did a bit of the dedication. And I'd like someone else, if possible, to take the magic talking stick. And thank you so much. And read verse 18 through to this is good, yeah, through to verse 18 through to 26. It's still and thinking of that one verse of dedication, but all the other things about may I become, may I. So these things. So please, if you do that, thank you very much.
May I be a protector for those without one, a helmsman for travellers, and a ship, a boat, and a bridge for all who wish to cross. May I be an island for those who seek one, and a lamp for those desiring one. May I be a bed for all who desire one, and a slave for all who want an embodied slave. May I be a wish-fulfilling jewel, a good vase, knowledge, mantras that accomplish, and great medicine. May I become a wish-fulfilling tree and a wish-fulfilling cow for embodied beings. Just like the great elements such as earth and like space, may there always be many varieties of bases of sustenance for the boundless sentient beings. Likewise, until all attain nirvana, may I also be the source of sustenance for all the realms of sentient beings that reach unto the ends of space. Just as the previous Sagatas generated the mind of enlightenment, and just as they dwelt according to the stages in the trainings of a Bodhisattva. Likewise, for the benefit of migrating beings, I shall generate the mind of enlightenment, and likewise I shall learn the trainings according to the stages. Those intelligent ones have concluded lucidly, seizing the mind of enlightenment in this way. But in order to increase it, they should highly praise it in the following manner. Now my life is fruitful. I have attained a good human existence. Today I have born in the Buddha lineage. I have become a child of the Buddha.
Thank you. So that carries on a number of dedications, and it brings up this thing of aspirational prayer. Sometimes it's translated, Mernam in Tibetan, Pranidhana in Sanskrit. These may I. So if we look at some of them. Number 8, verse 8. Verse 9, verse 10, there's a good set in there. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick, migrating beings in the world, until their sicknesses are healed. May a rain of food and drink descend to clear away the suffering of thirst and hunger. And during the eon of famine, may I myself turn into food and drink. May I become an inexhaustible treasure for those who are poor and destitute. May I turn into various articles of all necessities and abide close before them. So this aspirational prayer or pranidhana is a big, big thing in Bodhisattva practice. It's a big, big thing. If you look at the Ornament of Clear Realization, there are fairly hefty sections on making aspirational prayers. So some of them are about, when I become Buddha, may my Buddha field be like this and like that. Others, may all sentient beings be free of suffering. There are lots of things. And the question then arises, is it practical? Is it, will there ever be a time when all the sicknesses of all migrating beings in the world are healed? Will there ever be a time when there are no poor and destitute, not just in this world system, anywhere? Yeah? Will there ever be a time? Lama Zopa Rinpoche, remember some of his dedication prayers. Actually, I think we also, it comes at the end of the medicine Buddha puja, where it's such and such and such, may I do it right now? Or may I do this, that, and by myself alone? Yeah? And so then the whole kind of thing of what is the point if you can't actually make that happen? And somebody asked His Holiness Dalai Lama this same sort of question, and he came up with this. He said, it's not so much that it will happen, it's the wish, it's the guts around it, May I stay in samsara until all beings are free from samsara. That, to reinforce that, to push that. May I relieve the suffering of all sentient beings for as long as that takes to relieve the suffering of all sentient beings. It develops this courage, this bravery, because particularly in the Mahayana, there are countless stories of people who gain the Bodhisattva bhumis, move up, and then suddenly something happens and they give up on Mahayana. They give up on that mind of Bodhicitta, and they leave the Mahayana. And stop working for the welfare of all sentient beings and pull back and go for, I'm going to just leave samsara. So they cease to do that. And so we need to encourage ourselves. We need to, it's not about setting targets in a kind of business world. It's about developing this drive, this bravery, this guts to just keep on at it. Keep on doing it. So that we're always thinking these vast thoughts. And the vast thoughts help open the mind. They help broaden our perspective. And I think also, if you think about our society at the moment, with its kind of very realist, nuts and bolty type of attitude to life, that it helps break down that kind of grabbing at substance and end result. And if you train yourself, and these are also very useful. I mean, Lama Zopa Rinpoche in his daily prayers has given us some, and you will talk about one of them in the afternoon in the discussion. But some of these things are designed to push our minds, to push, May I be a doctor and a nurse and medicine. We can kind of go with that if we want, May I be an inexhaustible treasure. In other words, may I always be giving. May I always be generous. at some stage, the unenlightened mind is going to go, hang on a minute. Whoa, stop. That's interesting to catch when we have that. When our what would be called self-preservation, maybe, It's perfectly normal, self-preservation, and it is, in one sense. But for us trying to reach this thing called Bodhisattva, this mind of Bodhicitta that will move towards enlightenment, we need to push the mind out of its comfort zone, in a sense. And all teachers will do that. When you have a personal relationship, they will all seem as though they're demanding the impossible or asking you to do the impossible. If you think of in Australia, they're building this stupa, this big stupa in Bendigo, and they're modeling it on the kumbum in Jiangxi, and then as they've done that, it was bush, it was raw land, and they've built quite a lot now, and then they have to decorate it and all the rest of it. And I look at, the man who's leading it, Ian Green, and I just think, how on earth, how on earth can you do this? I just to take on that task, and when Rinpoche says, I'd like this done, and go, put my hand up, But they've done the most extraordinary thing. It's not complete, and maybe for 200 years it will never be complete, but they have done the most extraordinary thing in this huge space. And, they have the jade Buddha, which I haven't seen, but I've seen the kind of fake jade Buddha they have inside it. But it's just extraordinary that they've done that. But if you don't have the vast vision, you never go. You know what I mean? It's like when Rinpoche's got this thing of making huge tankas. 70-foot high tankas. And you think, what's the point of that? But somehow, not so much in our culture, but they have one in Singapore. And every year, Amitabha Buddhist Centre, they put it up in a park, and people can come and make offerings to it. And it's very inspiring to see this massive tanka hanging there, and of course protected from the rain and stuff like that. It's just extraordinary to see these huge tankas. And in old Tibet, they made these huge tankas that they would roll down the side of hills once a year. Or in Tashi Lumpur, there's a kind of wall where they used to hang the tanka. And also they used to do the same in Jiangxi. And then when the British invaded, I don't know who sold who, but it was made up of three pieces, a central bit, and then two bits on either side with it was applique, but big applique, apparently very, very beautiful. And somebody sold the two side bits to one of the British officers. So they only had the central bit left. And then, so they came back to England, and they were in the possession of this officer's family who weren't that interested. So they put it into store in London. And then the Second World War happened, and the store was bombed, and it was destroyed. It vanished. Because I thought, when I heard about that, I thought, wow, I wonder if that still exists. And so, did some checking, and it was just destroyed. But these huge tankers they made. And similarly, if you ever go to Tibet, or actually go to Namdaling, the monastery in the south, Nyingma monastery in the south, they have big statues. They're not the prettiest ones, I personally think, but they're massive. But if you go to Tashi Lumpur monastery, there's one hall which is just devoted to Maitreya statue, sitting cross-legged, holding the attributes. And it's, 70, 80 foot high, something like that. And you kind of, in that way that space in Tibet is quite interesting, the way they organize things. You kind of go in you go under a curtain, obviously, because that's how they do doors. So you go in, and then you're just faced with the bottom of the lotus. You can't even see. You have to kind of look up like this, and it's up there. And then you can get up into a gallery, and you can see his face. And it's impressive and very beautiful and very awe-inspiring. But somehow for me, what's also very interesting was that he made it between 1914 and 1917, when another half of the world was ripping each other apart, you know. It's extraordinary. So these big visions, these vast visions, it's good for us to practice a little bit. Not in that sense of, oh my God, I've committed to something and I won't be able to do it in 3 years' time. It's more about traveling in that direction, moving towards, kind of in the same way that, you know, we want to develop bodhicitta, but we're some way off, but we're traveling there. We're moving in that direction. So it doesn't become a burden, but just that wish to free all beings from suffering, that wish to be sustenance for all beings, that wish to help each and every sentient being with their pain and their suffering. Even if we fail and don't do all beings, if we do one, it's better than none. You know? When I was in Sera Monastery in the south, I went there to go and see a couple of people, and I was there with another European, and they liked to smoke a cigarette, you know. So then they felt they couldn't smoke in the monastery, which is fair enough, so they would go outside and have a cigarette. And then in the evening, it's tradition in the monastery to do kora, to do, you know, circumambulate the main temples and go around like that. So then the person we were with used to tease and go, oh, so you're going to do smoke puja and then some kora? But there was a funny mind where they go, I'm a bit tired, I don't think I can do 3. And I said, why can't, what's the thing with 3? And they said, well, you have to do 3 circumambulations. I said, no, you don't, you know. 2 is better than none, 1 is better than none, 3, you know what I mean? But we get these kind of things in our head. I can't do it because I can't do 3. Right, or we do this, you know, a prostration on the floor. If you kind of do your first prostration and then you think, oh, I can't do 3, you know, guys, come on, we have to go move on. We start at 0. Anything better than 0 is better, you know, that's it. So like, oh, I forgot to do 21 Vajrasattvas today. Did you do 1? Yeah, that's better than none. Don't focus on the negative, you know? Kind of, yes, we don't do lots of things, particularly if you're foolish like me in my youth and take on lots of commitments and then never have a chance of ever fulfilling them. But we do positive actions, and we need to... So this thing about... I'm trying to avoid the bit that I want you to discuss in the afternoon, but may I be a protector for those without one, a helmsman for travelers. I mean, presumably a helmsman is somebody who's steering the boat. You know, in the old boat, the most important person was the person with the rudder, control of the rudder. A ship, a boat, a bridge for those who wish to cross. Then this verse 19, that has an interesting kind of double take in it. In the Tibetan, it's 5 lines as opposed to 4. All the other verses are 4. And in the Sanskrit, it is 4 lines. So you have this, may I be an island for those who seek one. Island is how the Sanskrit word is dvipa. So Sri Lanka is Sinhala Vipa. You know, but it doesn't mean island as such. The core meaning is that you're on the sea and it's very rough, and you find a safe place to land. So it's that safe harbor, and that kind of, you can relax now. So Vipa, in the Tibetan, it's linka, which of course in Tibetan normally means park. So I've seen translations where a Tibetan has said, oh, you know, may I be a park for someone? And then someone goes, oh, that's not correct. The Sanskrit says vipa, it's about it's resort also is the word. It's, you know, you go to a resort to kind of, yeah? And in Tibet, parks are about going there, you relax, you have a picnic. Tibetans are big on picnics. And it's that feeling that comes, that thing. May I give that feeling to others. That's the point of that line there. But in Sanskrit, a lamp is deeper. So deepa and vipa are very close. I haven't seen the Sanskrit text, but I imagine there's just one little part of an akshara, one that has been dropped off, and then you end up with two different commentarial traditions. One saying it's about a resort and giving that sort of sense, and the other one saying, in Christianity, may I be a light to lighten the Gentiles. May I be a light to show people the way forward. May I lead with the lamp. So the Tibetans obviously got that double set of commentary and thought, well, they're both very good, actually, so we'll have them both, thank you very much, and put it into, that's why it has 5 lines. So this translation has tried to bring both of those in, which is nice. I like that, because it's not that one is wrong and one is right. They both are about an emotional stance or something. One is about, when sentient beings come to me, may they feel safe, may they feel relaxed, may they feel, that kind of thing. A resort in that calm thing, not like Falaraki or somewhere like that, where it's just clubbing, but just calm. And then may I be a lamp, may I light people's way, may I show people the way. And then friends of mine have commented that may I be a bed for those to desire one. But again, it's that to rest, when people are tired and exhausted, may I be somewhere where they feel they can recoup their energy and relax. I have friends who've been slightly more rude about that and said that, you should try not to be a bed for people, stop it. But those feelings that come with that, just that verse, may people who meet me, may they feel relaxed, may they feel safe, first line. May people who meet me, may I illuminate their world, may I help them in some way, may I brighten their world. Third line, may I be somewhere, somebody, where people can, when they're exhausted, may they recharge. And the opposite of that is, the opposite of that would be that third line, rather than coming to me and they feel they can recharge, it's like, oh my God, I don't want to go and see Mike because he just sucks me dry, I'm so needy, it's that, we need to. And then this final thing, I want to be a slave for all who want to be an embodied slave. And my advice to you is, say that to yourself in your meditation and see what happens. It really, because you can say it for a while, but we come from we're kind of our own individual agents. We don't have slaves in this society. We don't see slavery as a useful thing. Many people don't really confess to having servants anymore, even amongst the super rich. They talk about having a team that supports them or something like that. But may I be a slave is quite something to work with. And it will bring up stuff. You will, and that's what you work with. I remember when His Holiness taught in Zurich, and the Swiss have this, tradition of standing up to the Austrian overlords and William Tell shooting the apple off his son's head and all the rest of it. And so they have a kind of you should have a kind of pride. You should stand there. So when we first went into the hall on day one, there's Swiss obviously around there, and outside there were little Christian groups handing out sweeties. They were very sweet, weren't they? Very nice. And then the film crew were there, and then when the Dalai Lama came in, of course, a lot of us prostrated on the ground, and I was horrified. Just, how can you do that? You're putting yourself under the Austrian overlord, because they had that kind of history, and they were just horrified. And outside, people going, why do you do that? And it's against pride, I'm saying, you have something, you're better than me. I want to learn from you. It's against pride. But for them, it triggered a whole load of stuff. So I want to be a slave, very useful to work with, because it will trigger stuff. Don't become a slave, because it makes other people behave badly, generally. but it's a very interesting thing to work with. May I be a wish-fulfilling jewel? These are all, this second 20, verse 20 is a lot of culturally bound things. So, may I be a wish-fulfilling jewel? There's in Indian mythology, there's a jewel that when you own it, all your wishes are granted. And it pops up in lots of different stories. But there's a classic one with the Naga spirits, who are powerful beings, who are kind of serpentine beings, or they have the energy of kind of before a thunderstorm or a very dark. Like sometimes you get pools with a kind of dark, heavy energy. They're beings around that, and they're supposed to have this wish-fulfilling jewel in the crown of their head, but because it's in the crown of their head, they don't know they've got it, so they don't use it. And then a good vase. This is the vase of plenty. It's the vase that gives everything. We must have in our own culture these sort of things of something that's constantly giving. It's the horn of plenty. Yes, it's the horn of plenty. That would be our version of that. Just whatever you need comes out of it constantly. And then knowledge mantras that accomplish. Knowledge mantras means that accomplish the four actions, of pacification, increase, wrath, and whatever the fourth one is. Control, thank you, control. And then the great medicine is there's also this tradition in the West of the idea of the universal panacea, the one medicine that cures every single disease under the sun, the one thing. And then this wish-fulfilling tree. Again, when you do the visualization for the Lama Chirpa and you stack all the Lamas on the tree, that tree is the wish-fulfilling tree. But also in the stories, again, it's like, it's the tree that when you go there, it will grant all your wishes. So it's that same sort of feeling there. And the wish-fulfilling cow is the same, although it sounds odd in English, the wish-fulfilling cow. But if you imagine in traditional Indian culture, the cow was seen as the source of all good things. You get milk, you can use the pea as an antiseptic. It's Indian moo cows, I don't know what they do with their wee, but it's very good to stop the bugs eating rice. You sprinkle the wee over the rice as it grows, and the bugs don't eat it. And you use the poo to build your house also as a fuel. There's a whole load of stuff. You get these little pills up in Southall, which are called 5-substance gutta, or 5-substance things, and they're I forget what parts of the cow they are. They're not, it's living cow, so it's a bit of milk, probably a bit of cheese, and then you have poo and wee and one other thing. And they're supposed to be very health-giving, so people eat them on a daily basis. But these are very culturally bound, but you get the sense of what they're pointing at. It's the, may I be constantly giving, that thing, that giving attitude. That's such a hard thing for us, but again, it's that developing the giving in a realistic way. Now, I am not a bodhisattva. I wish I was, but I'm not. I know I'm not. So when I train in giving, I also have to be aware of burnout. I can do too much, and then like with Kanjala here, when she talked to the volunteers, saying, if you're going to volunteer here, that's fantastic, but you must have something behind you, so that when you finish volunteering, you don't end up with nothing and then regret the volunteering in the Dharma Centre, because of course that sets up huge problems later on in future lives. But it's the same thing. Give, push it a bit, but don't get into that situation where you're, I wish I hadn't done that. Wish I hadn't done that, particularly to Dharma centers and to teachers and things like that, because it doesn't help later down the line. It really doesn't help. So rest ourselves, give ourselves space. Say no when we can't give, because there'll always be somebody saying, please give me, particularly give me money. If a refugee community, it's always, please give me money, please help me do this, please help me. What we can do, we can do, but don't get into that kind of obligation, that fear, actually. I mean, before, when I went back to look after Dad, when he was dying, I kind of arrived about 2 months before he finally died. And the thing that I discovered was that Mum and Dad get phone calls regularly from people going, this is, charity for the blind or charity for the one-legged, and you gave us money, and please give us money again. We really need it. And they felt horribly obliged and felt they couldn't give, but then they felt immensely guilty about all of that. And I was quite cross with these people who were ringing up and doing that to them. So they got short shrift from me, I'm afraid. I think that's disgraceful, ringing up old people who are living at the end of their life and hassling them for money, although you're a charity. I just couldn't believe it. And people still do, but it's really interesting, that targeting of old people because they're more vulnerable, It's like we constantly get calls back at my mum's house, people saying your internet is down, or your internet has a problem, and I've now trained Mum to go, oh really, what is that problem? And then waste their time if she's got time on her hands. But of course what it is give us your details, and then they take it over. And again, I'm quite fierce with some of them, on occasion they've rung up and I've said, you are a disgrace to be trying to cheat old people. Silence, click, but really, it's appalling. But, so give carefully, give wisely, you know what I mean? And it's not money, it's also time, If somebody here needs to chat about something and you have the time, please give them the time, But don't feel you have to give them the time. That's the thing. It's a voluntary thing, So the dedications went through until verse 22, didn't they? Likewise, until all attain nirvana, may I also be the source of sustenance for all the realms of sentient beings that reach unto the ends of space. So all of that is kind of dedication, by all the merit that I've done, and this working towards gaining the mind of bodhicitta, may all the merit that will come when I take up that mind of bodhicitta, through that, may I be all these things. May I do all these things, yeah? So then, verse 23 and 24 are the actual doing of it, isn't it? That's when you generate the mind of bodhicitta. You generate the mind of seeking enlightenment in these two verses here. So all of the previous stuff is leading up to these two, really. And so there is a tradition of formally going through a bodhicitta ceremony, and you use this text, and you finish with these two verses. And we've got it printed up in there, because when the Jiangxi Church used to come, we used to do it quite regularly. So, unsurprisingly, I suppose, I'm going to force you to meditate on that later in the afternoon. But that, in a sense, is the point of these first three chapters. That's it. It's leading up to those two. And if you're reading the text, please kind of mark that off with something, so that when you're doing your scan meditation, you don't do what I do, which is just and then think, oh, hang on a minute, I really didn't relate to that bit on generating bodhicitta at all. Spend time on it, think about it, wish it, make it come from your heart. Because doing the bits before is nice. It prepares the mind for it somehow. The expansiveness of generosity, the expansiveness of the seven-limb prayer, and those extraordinary dedications, which are so hard to do, but are worthwhile to broaden the mind, push it out, make it bigger, Mahayana is nothing but make bigger, more, So we can really use this text to develop beautiful minds, beautiful minds. So, speaking of that, let's do a bit of meditation. And we'll use verses 18 and 19. So, may I be a protector for those without one, a helmsman for travelers, a ship, a boat, a bridge for all who wish to cross. May I be an island for those who seek one, and a lamp for those desiring one. May I be a bed for all who desire one, and a slave for all who want an embodied slave. So, this session, please don't focus on the slave part. You now know what the feeling is around island, and around light, and around bed. Yeah. So you're not wishing to become a vice spring bed. You're wishing to give rest. Yeah. And similarly, all of the first verse is it's about traveling. Samsara is often described as an ocean. Samsara is a kind of choppy ocean. And so when you get through it, you need a boat to get across it, a ship to get across it, a bridge over it even, And we have stunning bridges now that are massively long. The Orison Bridge is amazing. But all that thing is helping beings move over and out of samsara to find a safe haven, a resort, a place to go. That's the feeling. May I be that. So all of that stuff, there's enough to work with there. So please just meditate on that. May I be these things. Thank you. If you just get up and move around, because I want to force you to do some more meditation, so release have a good wiggle and a wobble and a shake. And a wee, of course.
One expression I heard kind of sums up Rinpoche's vast vision. I think he said, create the ocean, the fish will swim in.
Yes. I mean, some of his things you just think, that's impossible. But then, that's impossible nothing happens if we think that. Yeah. You have to try. Yeah. Okay, so just for this last bit, going back to purification, and some of you I know have initiation into Vajrasattva and others don't, but in Lama Zopa's book, it doesn't matter in that sense, or it does matter, but not. You can still visualize the deity. So if you're no good at visualizing, just imagine that directly above your head, so not sitting on your head, but like 4 fingers above it, is the source of all benefit and goodness. Everything that's beautiful and beneficial and pure and clear. And if you can give it form, then it becomes a bodhisattva, a fully enlightened Buddha manifesting in a Bodhisattva form, so manifesting with jewels and fine garments, fine raiments. And he's on his own, he has crossed legs, and he holds in his hands a vajra and a bell. And he's white. Everything is made of white light. And if you have the initiation and the permission, then please also visualize a consort, the female consort, female Buddha, because it's the union of those energies is, in highest Yoga Tantra, that's one of the ways we move on. And this deity, this Buddha, is the Buddha of purification. And then imagine from the deity, the white light, nectar light, pours down, trickles down, drips down, and goes over our body, and also comes through the top crown of our head, permeates the whole of our body. And there are 3 different visualizations you can do. One, you imagine that the light pours down, and as it moves through the body, it drives away all pain and negativity and difficulty and everything like that before it, until eventually it just goes out the bottom of the body and vanishes to the end of the universe. And then the second one you can do is to imagine that the light, this nectar light, pours down, and it's kind of like it's heavy, so it fills up the bottom of the body first, and all the mental rubbish and pain and anguish and everything else floats on top of it, until eventually it floods out of us and goes to the end of the universe. And we're just, each time we remain with a clean, clear, brilliant body of light. And then the final one you can do is that the nectar comes in, and it's like switching on a light. Just, there was darkness, there was nonsense, there was rubbish, and then bang, clean, clear, bright, brilliant. So whatever is more comfortable, you could do all of those if you want to, or you could just do one. But the felt experience, if you like, is of purifying, cleansing, beautiful, nurturing light, flooding in, nectar light, flooding into our body, flooding into our mind, permeating our minds entirely, our bodies entirely, so that there's no nonsense left, and we are just suffused with, drenched with, bathed in this nectar light, which is love, which is compassion, which is joy, which is nurturing, which is relaxing, all the kind of, which is higala, so, which is kind of warm, snuggly energy that just nurtures you completely. So we'll do that for just before lunch. So please, if the image doesn't come, it doesn't matter. Just this bright light above the head and this sense of being clean, free, cleansed, liberated. That's the key thing. So please feel very strongly that you're free, set free from your past conditioning, the unhelpful conditioning that leaves you in samsara, in this vortex of drama and nonsense. Under this light, this blessing of the Buddha has set you free. Clean, clear, spacious, open mind. Thank you. So that's it, lunchtime. So we'll do the food offering prayer. And I will wave goodbye to my public.